So he would use his brother's blackout a lot of times.
So Buster also had a 300?
I gave them both one.
Okay. When was that?
About years ago.
Okay. More than a year ago,
more than a year ago.
Okay.
All right, so, but he would do anything. Paul had this, you know, like a little light that I used that night. Paul would take that thing up to, you know, by 308, and I mean, he was always rigging something. He would do anything. Paul had this, you know, like a little light that I used that night. 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 Little light that I used that night. Light that I used that night.
Stolen out of Paul's truck at a party.
Was that years ago?
Years ago, yes, sir.
So there was a replacement gun, a third one, is that correct?
Correct.
What was that gun like?
It was about the same as the black one, except for the color of it. It was tan. It didn't have any kind of sight on it, you know, the first few times I saw it. And but other than that, it was about the same thing, just a different color. It was a tanner color.
And where would that gun typically be located?
I never really saw it move from the gun cabinet room. Most of the time it was in the main house at Moselle in the gun cabinet room.
You mentioned that that particular gun didn't have a sight on it or an optic on it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And what does that mean? What's the difference between having a scope or a sight and not having? How do you shoot it if it doesn't have one of those?
So you have something called iron sights, which is just it's already attached to the end of the barrel. It just has a little thing that you can see down, but nothing to zoom in your image. It didn't have a sight on it at all. The other one had the thermal sight that you used at night, and this one had no sight on it at all.
At some point, did y'all go get some sort of optic or some sort of sight for it, other than the iron sights?
Yes, sir. We went and bought it's called a red dot sight. It's just got a little. It's not very big. It's about maybe 2 or 3 inches, and it just has a little tube with a little red dot in the center of it. It doesn't zoom in either, but it gives you a little bit better of a look at what you're shooting at, a little bit better than an iron sight.
Is it like a thermal sight in that you can see what you're aiming at night?
No, sir.
So what do you see when you look through the red dot?
You can just see whatever's out in front of you from the naked eye.
And then how does the thermal work?
The thermal works at nighttime. You look and see heat glows up in a different color than black. It glows up in white, so you can see it very easily.
When did you and Paul go buy that red dot sight for that other blackout gun?
It was either in late March or early April. I'm not exactly positive on the date, but we bought it from the Ace Hardware in Hampton.
And when you say early March or late April, what year are we talking about?
2021.
You went with Paul to get that?
Yes, sir.
And what did y'all do after you got the sight?
We went back to Moselle and we put the sight onto the rifle and sighted it in.
Now you said back after y'all bought that red dot sight that y'all sighted in that the blackout. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. And which blackout are you talking about?
The tan one.
The tan one?
The tan one.
Right. And that would have been not the black one, but the tan one, and not the one that went missing years ago. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right. And where did y'all sight that gun in?
We sighted it in off the side of the main house. Right here, there's a little thing of steps that comes into the gun room, and we used the railing of the stairs to brace on and shot down into here as they were building a pond right here, so there was a berm.
Mr. Greer, tell us what you found concerning those items.
Based on my examination, it was determined that items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, and 39 had matching mechanism marks, and it was concluded that those items had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time.
So if I understand it correctly, the items collected right by Maggie had been loaded into, extracted to, and ejected by the same firearm that were identified, that items were picked up by the side of the house.
Yes, sir, that is correct.